I'm waiting for football to begin on Sunday night, and it did. It ended, and it wasn't very good, but certainly other stories, not just presidential inaugurations and the fallout withstanding. Incredible tragedy in Major League Baseball over the weekend as two players perished in the Dominican in separate accidents, one of them with really historic, incredible ties to the Orioles. Being with the Kansas City Royals in Yordano Ventura. Luke Jones joins us here now. He has been our Orioles insider and coverer here for a number of years. And, of course, you and I sat out in Kauffman Stadium 2 years ago in the ALCS. And Yordano Ventura was a massive, massive part of everything that was built in and around the Royals' little mini dynasty, if you will.
Yeah, and I mean, put all the baseball part of it aside, and certainly with Manny Machado, I mean, last year we talked about Yordano Ventura in not so flattering terms, and understandably so. But I mean, this was a 25-year-old kid, and we were just talking about Jose Fernandez 4 months ago. Not exact same circumstances, but just these kind of stories aren't supposed to happen. You're not supposed to be talking about a player dying early in his career like this. And, we talked about this with Trey Walker last year with the Ravens.
We talked about this with Fernandez big time in Miami, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's just, it's such a tragic, heartbreaking situation, for this kid, for his family, for the Royals organization, for, what a young player is supposed to represent, and certainly, I mean, this was a young man who was troubled on the baseball diamond, given some of the situations he'd put himself in and choices he'd made. But at the same time, you separate that, and just to see this happen, and you hear so much, and I know Jeff Hassan and some other national reporters were talking about the Dominican Republic and just the way of life down there, narrow roads and winding roads, and motorcycles, motorbikes all over the place, high-speed driving, cases where there's alcohol involved. You remember Oscar Taveras for the Cardinals a couple years ago.
And he was part of the grieving process, Yordano Ventura was.
Ventura last September had actually put he pitched and had tributes to Jose Fernandez and Oscar Taveras on his cap. And just surreal. I know some people pulled up those tweets from last September about that, and it's horrible. I mean, it's just something that it goes beyond baseball. I mean, anytime you hear about a young person losing their life in a tragic manner such as this, and whether there's alcohol related or not, I mean, it's something that just feels like such a waste. Someone who had so much to accomplish professionally and personally, and now to think that he's gone, I mean, it's just, it's something that's really unsettling. And like I said, we talked about this with Trey Walker with the Ravens a year ago, but in the case of Yordano Ventura, I mean, a guy who was at 25 years old, just coming into the prime of his career, still a guy that was still figuring it out to some degree, but had some success, including in the postseason. And just to see something like that, I'm not even going to say it puts things into perspective, because I think we all have perspective on our lives, and I think most of us understand, sports at the end of the day, it's entertainment, it's leisure, it's what we talk about to escape everyday life and the struggles and disappointments of that. But to see that line blurred and to see something like this happen, it hurts whether you're a Royals fan or not.
Luke, the other part of this, I guess, from a baseball perspective and from a civic perspective, and I know I talked to Alan McCallum about this, is, when you have championships like this, the Ray Rice fallout here, happened kind of harshly and around the same time after the Ravens won a Super Bowl, that the association of championship teams and their alumni, and for the city of Kansas City, and you were out there, you were there on the very early part of that building, and I know you watch a lot of baseball, and you saw the World Series the next year when they won, and his joy and his association to that championship, that city really fell in love with that team, and he was probably going to be one of the guys that was going to hang around for a little while. Some of those other guys are going to wind up going out the side door. He was one of the sort of entrenched guys around there, and I know it wasn't a great year last year, and he's trying to find himself. But, boy, for Major League Baseball as well to have lost two guys that were Cy Young caliber, no-hit caliber guys every time they've touched, this is really going to shine a light, I think, on what these guys do when they're away. We talk about this all the time with football players, when they're away from the complex and whatnot. But these deaths don't happen sort of in a bubble, I think, around baseball. And, there's a lot of traffic accidents and a lot of it Dominican. And, I guess for the people of Kansas City, the grieving process of a guy that they fell in love with there and a guy they fought with, because everybody fought with this kid, right? I mean, from an Orioles fan perspective, he was not real popular, Luke, right?
Oh, not at all. And, it's, again, what happens on a diamond and even Manny Machado getting in a fight with Giordano Ventura, I mean, that's a far different
But whatever
animal.
their baseball personality is, that is their WWE character, right?
Yeah,
for the fans, right?
Yeah, but, and you just said it, I mean, this is a Royals team that, clearly fell short in 2016. They're trying to make another run at it, but you can see that window, at least with their current group of veteran players, it's closing. It's just a financial reality when you're talking about a mid-market team. Kansas City doesn't have the payroll capabilities of a Yankees or the LA Dodgers, for example. So you knew that they're kind of in transition, and it's kind of started already, but you said it. I mean, this kid's 25. He was going to be a piece that they were going to build around. And
he's a little bit like a Royals legend to some degree because he was associated with all that and his contributions. I mean, even though it's short term, the Royals might not win a whole lot more World Series. I mean, your Giordano Ventura is going to be iconic there forever because of his contributions to that period of Royals baseball, I think.
Yeah, and to get back to the point you made, whenever you have any of these guys that are linked to a championship, linked to something special, something historic, there's always going to be a sense of loss then when you lose some of that. I even think back to, even just the 2000 Ravens. I think of, a couple individuals, Chuck Evans comes to mind.
Sure.
And he wasn't an integral part of that team or anything like that, but, it's just, when you lose individuals, especially if it's someone that played such a part as Ventura, that does hurt a fan base. And, from a nostalgia standpoint, I think that hurts. In the case of Ventura, a guy who had so much good baseball ahead of him. And
I loved watching him pitch, by the way. I did. I mean, when he was pitching, I wanted to watch the game.
Yeah, when he was focused on pitching and not the nonsense that he got himself involved in. We talked about that a lot last June. We don't need to rehash it. I think everyone here is aware of that. But, yeah, I said this to you when Jose Fernandez passed away in September. If you had asked me, name a short list, 2 or 3 guys who 5 years from now, and most people kind of, Clayton Kershaw is still that guy that
Sure.
is associated with being the best pitcher in baseball right now, I think most would say. But 5 years from now, Jose Fernandez is one of 2 or 3 guys that I would have named as far as might be the best pitcher on the planet. I mean, that's how good he was. I wouldn't put Ventura quite in that same class, but he was certainly a guy who was going to be in the mix for all-star appearances and potentially a Cy Young at some point. I mean, it's just it's really hard to see something like that happen. And if you're a baseball player or any professional athlete, and look, things are going to happen. There are going to be accidents, and we've all experienced that in our own personal lives over the years, and will in the future. But for some of these guys, where in the case of Jose Fernandez, we're on a speedboat and under the influence, and in the case of Ventura, there were early reports alcohol being involved. We'll hear all.
Well, when it happens in the overnight on a Saturday night, we're all,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we're not naive. I mean, these are young men. They're doing what a lot of us did in our early 20s, and many of us wouldn't be proud to admit probably weren't safe doing it all the time. But it's a reminder that as great, as blessed, as talented as these individuals are, they're not immortal. They're not invincible. And when stuff like this happens, you just hope, if there's any positive to be taken from it, is not that everyone's going to learn from it, because inevitably it's going to happen at some point to someone else. But you hope maybe the message gets through to at least a few individuals. Maybe there's some life that's saved at some point. It's something that, again, it goes far beyond baseball. It goes far beyond sports. And when you see that, it's just a reminder to us all how precious life can be and how we can't take anything for granted.
He is Luke Jones. He's covering baseball here. And, of course, the fallout of this Giordano Ventura story, we'll be hearing about that, and I will check in with my friends out in Kansas City, I'm sure, before it's all over. We are headed to Houston for Super Bowl 51 next week. And, Luke, I know you don't know this because you don't have the internet in Pennsylvania, but I'm wearing my Oriole white paneled cap today. That is sort of the changing from the purple to the orange as we get ready for Sarasota. The Trumbo signing, obviously the dealing off of Gallardo. There's been some activity. I don't know that we're expecting a whole lot more activity, but what you see is what you get. And, I guess we're looking at the Orioles now with Trumbo and saying, well, they just added 30 home runs to their lineup. I mean, that's not a bad thing, right?
Yeah, especially at the price that they got him. There was plenty of speculation as far as what he was going to get. Clearly 3 years, $37.5 million is not what he was anticipating, what he was hoping for, but I think it is a reflection, and we've even seen that just in general with how slow the market had been for power hitters. Even someone like Edwin Encarnacion, who got a good deal with Cleveland, but it wasn't what he was anticipating or hoping to get at the start of the offseason. It just kind of shows how priorities have shifted a little bit. We've seen clearly a high demand for relief pitching. I think almost to a point where teams have overpaid for it, quite frankly. But we've seen that trend, and we've seen that trend over the last 2 to 3 years. In the case of the Orioles, this was another example of Dan Duquette waiting it out. And to his credit, they got him for a price that was very reasonable. 3 years, $37.5. In a perfect world, and I said this to you at the end of the season and early in the off season, I would have liked to have seen them perhaps pursue. And Dexter Fowler was really the only guy that was out there. I wasn't expecting it, given how last offseason played out. But that was.
He would never pass the physical.
well, you had to get him to that point, and quite frankly, after how it all played out, whatever the real story was, which I'm still not entirely sure how it played out. But,
there's at least 3 sides to that story.
Yeah. It's still weird. Still elements of that I'm confused by, but it's neither here nor there at this point. But in the case of Trumbo, they know what they're going to get. Do I think he's going to hit 47 home runs again? No. Do I think he's a guy that's a good bet playing at Camden Yards to hit up over 30, approach 35 home runs, be in that territory? Yeah. And if you can limit his time in the outfield and you can keep him more as a DH and spell Chris Davis at first base on occasion, he plays pretty good defense at first. If you can do that and you can maximize his offensive value and keep that negative defensive value, try to minimize that part of it, then this will be a fine signing. The reality is 3 years, $37.5 million, that's not a big contract anymore. Now, it's crazy to say that, and 5 years ago and certainly 10 years ago, that was a much bigger commitment. That's not so much now. So I think this signing's fine. Again, I would have liked to have seen the Orioles try to diversify their lineup a little more, but they did bring in Seth Smith, who does give them more of an on-base capability. So they have that. We'll see what Hyun-Soo Kim does in year 2. I'm very interested to see if he's going to get some more opportunities against left-handed pitching, because I think you want his on-base capability in the lineup as much as possible. If he can handle southpaws, of course, and we don't know that at this point, because he really didn't play enough last year against lefties to really judge that. But if you have a couple guys like that that can give you some on-base capability, Chris Davis bounces back a little bit from where he was last year and is more like the guy he was 2 years ago. I think that's a net gain there. Again, I don't expect Trumbo to hit 47 home runs, but I think clearly he's a guy that I think 35 is a reasonable expectation for him, given how this ballpark suits him. And it just ultimately, I think they'll be capable offensively. They'll hit home runs. They'll have some periods like they had last June where they'll absolutely rake and they'll be the best offense in baseball for a 3-4 week period. And then they'll have some periods where they're really going to struggle, and you're going to say, well, they live and die by the home run, and they strike out too much, and they don't get on base enough. But it's where they are as a lineup right now. And the reality is with some of the pieces that they had and guys getting raises and just where they are, from a payroll standpoint and from a roster standpoint, there wasn't a whole lot they could have done to dramatically change this team short of trading a Zach Britton or trading a Manny Machado, which I'm not saying that they should have done that, but you kind of just get in a period where you know what this team's going to be. They're going to have some flaws offensively, but they are going to hit home runs. They have good infield defense. Outfield defense is still a concern of mine. Seth Smith is an upgrade over Trumbo in right field, but not a dramatic one. And it's going to come down to look at the pitching. Bullpen will be good. I don't have much doubt about that, but can Kevin Gausman channel what he was in the second half and maybe take that another half step or a step higher than that? Can Dylan Bundy, now going into the year, knowing he's going to be a starter, knowing that the innings shouldn't be nearly as much of a concern, even though still could be somewhat of a concern late in the year, but you have those guys take steps forward, which I don't think it's unreasonable to think that could happen. And Chris Tillman stays healthy, and is Chris Tillman, then you figure out what you have with Ubaldo Jimenez and Wade Miley. Those are the big wild cards on the back end of the rotation. So I think this team's going to be competitive. I think they'll be in the mix. I'm not going to say they're the favorite in the East. I think Boston has clearly established themselves to be that. But I think this team does have enough talent, does have enough pieces to feel that they're going to be in the wild card mix and should be relevant and should be another interesting summer here in Baltimore.
Well, the Bundy and Gausman step up has to happen, right? And
I mean, if they want to be a serious contender and not just a team that's kind of just hanging around, yeah. I mean, there's no doubt you need that. I mean, there's no question about.
Tillman was pretty good last year. I mean, if he can be that guy again, that's good enough for me.
Yeah, I mean, if Chris Tillman, if the shoulder issue is completely behind him, there's no reason to. And keep in mind, this is a contract year for him, so you're going to have a guy who, not that he wasn't focused before, but a guy that you would think is going to come into spring training in tip-top shape and extra motivated to get a big payday, whether it's in Baltimore or elsewhere next off season. And like I said, I mean, Gausman, he's the guy that I mean, Bundy. I'm optimistic about him. Don't get me wrong, but he's still young. He's earlier in his development. Gausman to me is the guy that, barring a health concern, I really like the guy that I saw in the second half last season. I mean, that game, I still point back to that game he pitched at Fenway where, I mean, he pitched, that was a snapshot of what you used to get from Mike Messina back in the mid to late 90s, Got to do it for more than just one start, more than just one occasion.
But once you see it once, you feel like it's replicatable.
Yeah, and that's not to say a guy's going to do that every time out, but can he be that dominating guy for 8 starts and then have another 15 starts where he's certainly good enough to win, and then every guy's going to have 5 starts where you just say, well, it wasn't very good. I mean, even the best have some of those, but can Kevin Gausman channel that greatness a little more consistently, where we see that a few more times a season? And if he does that, I mean, look at his numbers already. He had a good year. Look at his final numbers. You'll sign off on that. Can he be a little bit better than that? If he can, then this team looks better and better.
Luke can be reached, Luke at WNST.net. He's also Baltimore Luke out on the Twitter. I am Nasty at WNST.net. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on our Facebook as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. Don't forget, we're going to be in Houston, Texas next week for Super Bowl 51 and all the proceedings of the Atlanta Falcons and the New England Patriots as well. Will be on the Radio Row floor down there. Lots of celebrities, lots of fun. I'm sure it's always our favorite week of the year, and we're looking forward to it. Rested up a little bit this week as we get through it. Little Senior Bowl, little Caps, little Terps, little Wizards. Plenty of time around here. And if you miss anything at all, you can find it in the Buy a Toyota Audio Vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device. Just download the TuneIn Radio app. Don't forget, our WNST London road trip is up. It's running. We're selling it. We got lots of people going with us. We're finalizing all the parties and stuff later this week as well before we get to the Super Bowl. And we're looking forward to having you on that trip as well. I am Nestor. This is WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST Charleston, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.